Hello everybody and welcome back to ChäoS. So let's go ahead and get started. Just let me get my timer ready. Thing doesn't always slide out like it's supposed to. So this was a voiced over line, so we'll just go ahead and continue on. At least, actually no, I don't think it was. I don't want to see anything. Okay, no, it was, yeah, because I thought as much. I could have sworn that the quotation marks meant that they were voiced.
は一定じゃない。僕には矛盾がある。愛にはエラーがある。地球は回ってない。きっとゲームなんだ。
I plugged in my PC while stuffing my face with pieces of fish sausage.
僕じゃない。
Mindor's X. And it's Grouch Soft. At least my Sarah wallpaper appeared on them. Or at last my Sarah wallpaper appeared on the monitor.
僕がいるべき世界は
I instantly started up ESO without a second's hesitation.
ここじゃないんだ。
And Chapter 2. Beep, beep. Please hurry up and board the bus for the field trip. Nishijo Takumi lay sprawled on the tatami-covered floor with a colored pencil in his hand. It was yellow. The one he had several minutes before was red. He reclined on his sketchbook, almost covering it with his body, as he ran the pencil across it lightly. Takumi loved to draw. He loved it so much that even during school he always doodled in the margins of his notebooks. The TV, which had been turned on even though no one was really watching it, was currently playing the morning news. To Takumi, who was still only in 4th grade, the news was nothing but boring stuff, so he didn't look at the screen. Beep beep, 300 yen for candy. He was drawing a yellow bus. He pretended he was the bus driver. The bus is full, so we're gonna take off. Beep beep. Or just beep. Whoops, not two. Whatever. He brought imaginary scenes into reality through his drawings. He worked so energetically that there were many times when his lines went off the surface of his sketchbook onto tatami. Each time, Nanami, who was reading manga nearby, became angry and grumbled, "Geez, you mustn't get it dirty," even though she was just his little sister. Unconcerned, Takumi continued immersing himself in his drawing. But when he reached the stage of drawing people in the windows of the bus, Takumi's hand stopped. And he deliberately tore apart the sketchbook. The day before the field trip, Takumi's parents had suddenly told him, "You can't go on the field trip." He was looking forward to it this whole time. He was overexcited since the morning, so much so that his heart pounded as he wondered how soon it would be tomorrow. He simply couldn't bring himself to accept how his parents had callously sentenced him. Weeping, he insisted he would go no matter what, but it was futile. Regardless of what he said to them, his parents wouldn't listen, telling him only, "You can't," and "We're only looking out for your best interests," over and over. Burrowing into his bed, Takumi trembled with such frustration that, as if he were about to rip the mattress to shreds, he loathed his parents from the bottom of his heart. At that time, a field trip had been a tremendous event for Takumi, who once sufficient to induce this level of passion in him. Though everyone else in the class could go, he alone could not. From Takumi's point of view, it was all too unreasonable. Takumi's world was a lonely one. Their world was full of fun and passion. He also had the sense that he was the only one to have been cut off from the rest of the world. He couldn't forgive his teacher, his classmates, everyone who had left him behind. Nor could he forgive his parents for their abrupt and unfair sentence. This began to transform into hatred towards his parents and classmates. Biting his lip hard enough to make it bleed, he continually repeated curse-like words to himself. None of you should be able to go. Next morning, the telephone was ringing off the hook since early morning. Each time his mother answered it, her response seemed more and more unsettled. In the end, Takumi couldn't get even a bit of sleep. It was a little past 9. Nanami sat on a cushion in a ladylike manner reading manga. The day before, she told Takumi, Nana's gonna stay home from school, too, and be with her bro. And now she was there near him as if it were perfectly natural. Their father had already gone to work and was nowhere to be seen. Their mother was so busy answering the phone that she didn't have time to make breakfast. There was no need to go to school today. Still sulking, Takumi opened his sketchbook and began drawing to clear away his gloom. But his irritation wouldn't go away, and right when he tore up and flung his sketchbook away in annoyance, Nanami raised her voice in confusion. Takumi thought she was talking about the drawing he'd been working on, but her eyes were glued to the television. Nanami yelled for their mother, who was even now responding to another phone call. Listening from beside her, Takumi absent-mindedly followed his sister's gaze to the TV screen. The screen showed the spectacle of a fallen highway overpass. Only an area about 50 meters in size had collapsed. Unfortunately, a single bus that had happened to be passing over that one spot became caught up in it and lay toppled over sideways beneath the overpass. It was indeed the bus that Takumi was supposed to have ridden, the bus all his classmates had been riding. A single glance was enough for him to imagine most of what had happened. His classmates were reflected on the screen. One was crying, one had his forehead covered in blood, one was being laid on a stretcher and carried off into an ambulance. A pale-faced reporter described the circumstances of the accident. Oh, and it's cut. So, a pale-faced reporter described the circumstances of the accident, but Takumi didn't really understand what he was saying. His mother stood, stock still at the entrance to the room, face pale, still gripping the phone. Is dead. For some reason, Takumi was certain of it. Everything being shown on the news right now bore a powerful resemblance to what he had envisioned in frustration and hatred last night. One thing alone resided in Takumi's heart, the peculiar conviction that he was the precursor of precognitive powers. An ESP investigation TV program he had seen long ago was carved into Takumi's memory. The precog who appeared on that program had startled the contemporary world with his display of overwhelming supernatural abilities. In one test, 12 items were to be placed in boxes labeled from 1 to 12, and the precog was to sit in a different room with cards that had the items' names on them and predict which box they would go in. Only afterward would some staff members in a different room actually place the items in the boxes. When they tallied up the overlap between what was predicted and the box's actual contents, the precog's 90% success rate made the show's host go wild. No. See, I'm gonna say this. This show that they're talking about here, the way it should have worked, would have been you already put the items in the boxes and you have the precog guess which box has which item. Because this could just as easily be well, we want to make it look good, so we're going to let him go first, and then we'll put, for the most part, but not completely, the boxes or the items in the right box that he said the item would go in. And everybody will freak out, oh my god, I can't believe he got it right. No, the way that should work is, like I said, you put the items in the boxes and then you have the precog guess which box has which item. As you watched, Takumi played along by making predictions at the same time as the precog, with the result that he got every single one right. But of course, he didn't tell anyone about it. That was why now, too, he saw the accident on TV and thought to himself that his foresight had been correct. Takumi's mother began to embrace him, but he slipped out of her arm and crawled to another corner of the room. His mother murmured emptily, her gaze swimming through the air.
本当によかった。
Of course, little does everybody know that the accident wouldn't have happened had Takumi gone on the field trip. Takumi felt like vomiting. Everything was rotten, he thought. So what if he had precognitive powers? It took a mere instant for his heart to freeze. For some time afterward, Takumi stopped speaking. He was literally mute. He wouldn't let out a single word in response to anyone. His becoming mute worried his parents, who started becoming, I read that wrong, I skipped over a word, who started becoming more and more overprotective. As they thus started to seem stupider and stupider to him, Takumi ended up deliberately playing the role of a wordless boy. It was his way of getting back at them, he thought. Noticing that he had stopped speaking, Takumi's mother took him to the psychiatric ward of a general hospital. He was diagnosed with PTSD. Since he didn't actually have PTSD, of course, he didn't take a single dose of medicine they gave him. He only pretended to take it. Takumi's parents didn't catch on to the fact that he was acting, even when he saw them frittering about him and racking their heads over him. He didn't feel the least bit apologetic. Everything feels like a lie. The world is full of fiction. Furthermore, it seemed like everyone's ill will was directed at me.
いつもあなたが使っているチャットルームへログインして自分で調べてみてください。私の言っていることが間違っていないってわかるはずです。それと、私が言ったことは全部本心です。これだけは信じて。
After laying out her incomprehensible opinion, Yua tacked on that one last part and vanished from before me. Like hell I could believe her. You've got some nerve to say believe me after deceiving me. No matter what, I didn't want to acknowledge my everything, which Yua had thrusted at me. I wanted to think that her calling me Shogun had merely been idle words or rambling. But when I looked into the chat room's backlog, I saw that she wasn't wrong about the timestamps not matching.
僕は無遊病なの。
I hadn't been sleeping when Shogun posted his parts of the chat. It was an incontrovertible fact that I had gone to At Cafe at the time, but I hadn't fallen asleep, so I couldn't be a sleepwalker. Then what did it mean that I don't have any memory of posting as Shogun? Alternatively, someone other than myself could control my body. Ridiculous. To prevent myself from getting even more stressed, I escaped from reality to another fictional world, ESO. Even everything about ESO was a lie, because when you got down to it, it was a world and a game. But in Baselard, I could become Nightheart, an existence practically on the same level as God. I could accept this kind of lie, this kind of fabrication. I wanted to stay here, I thought. What's wrong with that? Or maybe ESO itself was the real thing, and this world was fake, perhaps a game, for instance. Maybe Nishijo Takumi was the fictional existence, and Nightheart was my true self.
ねえ、ナイトハルト。
I called to the paladin in the center of my monitor. Am I controlling you, or are you controlling me? Which is it? Are you real, and am I the avatar? What if the world I was in right now was a game? That would explain everything. If, in the same way that I was watching the Nightheart inside my monitor, if I too were being watched by someone, whose eyes are those? That person would have to be the player controlling me. If so, I'd like him to play my role better, but an avatar can't voice complaints. That doesn't make any sense. It would have made sense if Shogun and I were the same person. It would make Okay, I think it's supposed to be, it would make sense if Shogun and I were the same person. For some reason, they went with past tense rather than present tense. Come to think of it, Lieselet was in a similar situation. It was impossible for Nightheart and Lieselet to ever exist in Baselard at the same time because they had only one player, me. And that's not strictly true. You could multi-box. Maybe, in a similar manner, Nishijo Takumi and Shogun couldn't exist in this world at the same time. One could also contemplate the possibility that it was a bug. Speaking of bugs, my running into weird girls in murder cases might have been due to a bug as well. The image Shogun had sent me flickered across my mind, and I held my head. I shook it despairingly from side to side. I had to run away from everything. If there's really a player out there controlling me, I'm begging you, please reset me. And rebuild me once more from scratch. Well, shit, that's a little too soon for me to end the part here because we're only at about 16 minutes, so this part will go to 30. And then we'll probably end it then and there. Next part will probably be longer to make up for that. The university hospital's waiting room was packed with old people waiting their turn to be seen by a doctor. Nothing about the tableau yeah, that's just a word that I don't remember. I remember I had issues with it before when I've played through this last time, but I don't recall. Whatever. Had changed from several years ago. It was enough to make me think the time had changed. It was enough to make me think that time had stopped. Why did I say changed? Worse, the air was stagnant, as befitted the stench of disinfectants, and everyone had dark looks on their faces. Try to spend 5 minutes in a place like this, and you'd get depressed, you'd get depressed enough you'd want to die. I don't like hospitals. I don't think very many people do. Since I was little, I've been terrified of how there are hardly ever any traces of a human presence in the hallways beyond the lobby, although there tend to be lots of people in the lobby itself. It was almost as though the scent of death lurked in those hallways. I thought this itself was the hospital's true face, and that things far more horrifying and eerie were hidden at the ends of the corridors. That was why I hadn't really wanted to come here, but there was something I needed to verify no matter what, and so, unable to avoid visiting, I intently waited for my turn. Even after I entered ESO, the words Yua had left with me spun around and around in my head, making it impossible for me to concentrate. As a result, I worried about this and that all the way until the morning, and became seriously scared that something about me might be abnormal. By coming to the hospital like this, I hoped a doctor would give me their official guarantee that Nishijo Takumi is perfectly normal. I wanted proof that Yua, not I, was the one with the issues. I was used to coming to the hospital's psych ward, although I'd unthinkingly nodded when the younger lady at the desk asked me if it were my first time being examined here. Ever since the aforementioned bus accident, my mother had brought me here at regular intervals. When I entered middle school, the doctor responsible for me diagnosed me as completely cured, and because I stopped going here, it had been about 4 years since my last visit. The doctor I was initially assigned to was Professor Moroku, who was said to be highly influential in his field, but he examined me just a few times before switching me to a doctor who had been one of his pupils. And I think we might have gone red last time. Last time I played this, rather. I know the last decision we made was a green. But I think the last time I played this, we went with red. So I was gonna flip a coin, but you know what? We're just gonna go with green again. Like I said, I could be remembering incorrectly, but I'm pretty sure that last time I played this went with red. Despite being called a pupil, he wasn't particularly young. If anything, he looked older than he should have been. Last night, I had suddenly recalled that Dr. Takashina's words.
ここは病気や怪我だけじゃなくて心にも効く病院なんだよ。
Yeah, okay, because that's how that works. I hated the hospital, but he was very kind to me. I had the impression that he was a good person. Even though I had utterly succeeded in deceiving all the adults around me to the very end, Dr. Takashina was the one who saw through me and declared me fully healed.
あの人に調べてもらえれば。
What would he say if he knew I'd turned into a gross otaku? No, it's been too long. He must have forgotten who I was in the first place. I was soon called to the examination room, so much for my thinking that I'd have to wait a really long time. Why had there been so many people in the lobby? It'd be quite a twist if they were being paid to sit around there and make the hospital seem popular. It was a different room from 4 years earlier. When I entered, a familiar face was there to greet me.
いやー、西条くん。
Dr. Takashina put on an ample smile, stood up and offered me his hand. Realizing that he wanted a handshake, I hastily returned his grip.
また君に会えて嬉しいよ。いや、嬉しいというのは変かな。君にしてみれば、またここに来るというのは辛いことなわけだからね。
It had been 4 years since we'd seen each other, but Dr. Takashina was incredibly friendly. I had been kind of nervous, but all at once I found myself able to relax.
それで、今日はどうしたんだい？
Dr. Takashina urged me to sit, so I settled down in a chair. Perhaps because he'd released me from my anxiety, I spoke about everything that had happened to me, and everything that might still happen to me in one breath. Being unaccustomed to talking made me get blocked up countless times, but Dr. Takashina kept listening and nodded with a serious look on his face the whole time without trying to rush me. I talked about all of it, of course, from the demon girl to Yua. It occurred to me that it might be dangerous to tell him, but I had no one else to rely on.
結論から先に言おうか。
After hearing me out, Dr. Takashina briefly fell into thought, then opened his mouth.
君は正常だよ。何の問題もない。
本当ですか？
But you didn't do any tests or anything.
もちろん。
Those are the words I had hoped for above any others. I had come all the way to this hospital just to hear them. I had been fearful, not knowing what I should do if he told me, "You're abnormal." But I was so glad he'd been the one to examine me.
むしろ、おかしいのはその楠木さんという女性だね。西条くんの話だけで判断するのは難しいが、おそらくその女性は精神的な障害を患っているだろう。今後、君に危険を及ぼすような行動に出る可能性がある。すぐに警察に通報しよう。
え？
The police. That might indeed be the safest approach. Yua was insane. She was weird in the head. I shuddered at the thought that she might start stalking me again.
もちろん、僕も責任を持って君を保護するつもりだ。
And exactly how do you plan to go about doing that, Doc? Looking at me reassuringly, he patted me on the shoulder as though to encourage me. He even handed me his business card. His cell phone number was printed there.
何か問題が起きたらいつでも連絡をくれて構わないよ。
But there's really no problems that you can help us with unless it's medical of some sort.
24時間、いつでも君のところに飛んでいくからね。
いいんですか？
当たり前だよ。僕は君の主治医なんだから。
I was on the verge of tears. I thought from the bottom of my heart that I was truly grateful to have been placed under this man's care. Such good doctors must be quite rare nowadays.
悪魔女のことについても 通報した方が良さそうだね。西条くん、君の見たその女がニュージェネの真犯人で間違いないよ。これはものすごい目撃証言だ。
Yeah. Then yeah, kind of got that theory, Doc. That's well, that's Takumi's idea of how things are. Dr. Takashina seemed a little thrilled, but it didn't come out in his voice. His manner of speaking was as soothing as ever.
事件は西条くんのおかげで解決だ。君は渋谷のヒーローだよ。僕はこの瞬間に立ち会えて実に光栄に思う。
I was a hero? Oh my god, it's like some freaking JRPG music in the background. This was an ESO. Someone like me could never be a hero. But once I began imagining it, my face started flaming. Shibuya's female middle school students and high school students and college students and office ladies would all see me off with squealing cheers. I'd become stunningly popular and charismatic. It'd be cool to become a TV personality, but since I don't like being in front of a lot of people, I'd create a startup business instead, and I'd make a killing as the charismatic company president. I'd be in a harem situation with lots of gorgeous secretaries waiting on me. Of course, I'd have triggered flags for all of them, and they'd be soppily in love with me. I'd live in a high-rise apartment in Roppongi, and employ a bunch of cute maids, like a maid cafe, meant just for my own personal use. Naturally, they'd provide sweet and luxurious night services as well, and so on and so on.
まさに勝ち組。
Okay, so we didn't quite hit 30 minutes, but I wasn't actually expecting there to be another one of those sort of, you know, that static effect thing, which is basically what I've been using as my go-to for when to end parts. So we're going to go and end it here. And next part we will continue with this hospital visit, with the actual hospital visit. So yes, I will see you all next time. Quick reminder, I do have a Patreon and Discord. You can find links to those down below in the description. I do recommend joining the Discord so you can stay up to date on channel happenings. And as for the Patreon, if you enjoy the content on the channel, that is the easiest and best way to support the channel. So again, I do recommend that you join it. Or that's not actually one where I necessarily recommend it. But if you enjoy the content on the channel, that is the best way to support the channel. So that is my recommended place to go if you wish to help support the channel, so I can continue to bring you all this content that you enjoy. Obviously, I'm assuming that you're enjoying it. So until next time, a goodbye and farewell.